Well, obviously, everybody, you know that Inter Milan overcame Benfica, and we have a beautiful Milan Derby. We'll talk about that in a second. But let's focus now fully on the semi-finals. Some tasty finals on paper, at least, and it's a repeat of last year. Of course, Real Madrid, the team that never dies, Shaka Hislop, against Manchester City. What do you envision this time around? Because obviously last season, Man City really should have put the game to bed, but Real Madrid wouldn't give up, and they overcame, won the whole thing after beating Liverpool, of course. But what do you see in this one against what I think is the strongest Man City side Guardiola has ever had?
Well, you can make the argument that, 85 minutes into that second leg, 88 minutes, the game was put to bed. But Real Madrid, as they just managed to do all season long, last season particularly, just refused to accept that, refused to accept defeat. I think a couple of things jump to mind here. First of all, can lightning strike twice? And while lightning struck, 3 times, 4 times for Real Madrid last season, you just wonder if Manchester City have learned their lesson. I've said all along that I think City have the best team in Europe, or at the very least in the Champions League competition. I can hear Arsenal fans screaming at me. At times, I felt that Pep Guardiola got in the way of his own side, and I wanted him just to get away from that, put his best side out, let them play. Let them deal with the opponent as it came. I thought you saw that for the most part against Bayern Munich. He wasn't overthinking things. He had to make a slight adjustment in terms of that defensive line as we've been speaking about. But he put his best team out and let them play. I expect him to do the same against Real Madrid. I expect that as a team, as a club, they've learned from that experience last year. They've learned what it means to switch off, even in the last 5 minutes, even at the 175-minute mark of a 180-minute tie, how the Europe's best can punish you. I think what also plays in their favor is, I think I'm right in saying, the second leg is at the Etihad. Correct. The second leg, more to the point, is not at the Bernabeu. That for me, I think will also prove huge in City's fortunes. While I'm sure Real Madrid fans are screaming at the screen right now, saying, how could we so easily write their team off? I did exactly the same 12 months ago, and look what happened. So maybe me writing Real Madrid off is a little bit of a good omen for the Madridistas out there. But saying that in all seriousness, Real Madrid continue to prove that they are, especially when it comes to this competition, they are far better than you see on a Saturday in La Liga. And I say that knowing full well that they won La Liga last season at a canter. But even so, I still think that they up their game come the Champions League. And that's what you saw. Yeah, but again, to that point, I think City know that, have learned that lesson the hard way.
Yeah, you made a very good point about the fact that the return leg is at the Etihad. And I think even though that may sound very simplistic to the eye, Shaka, it is a very valid point, because there is such a thing as a psychological advantage, especially in front of your fans and wanting to protect, maybe chase. We'll have to see. Erling Haaland, of course, being a major factor in this game, something Manchester City didn't have last year. So you would think, as you said, that Man City, this is it for them. This is it. They have the complete squad. They have Erling Haaland. Pep Guardiola surely cannot overthink it. Again, this has to be the year where finally they make it to the final once again and hopefully win. However, like you said, Real Madrid, just like in WWE when The Rock is like winning and he's like going like this to the crowd and he thinks he's beating The Undertaker gets up and just grabs him by the throat. And I just feel that that's Real Madrid every single time. I can't tell you the amount of analysts and pundits last year that just gave Real Madrid no chance, even all the way in the final against Liverpool. And you just can't write them off. Rodrigo said something really, really important, Shaka, right after that Chelsea game. He said, when you come to Real Madrid, the expectation, the necessity in your to-do list is to make it to the Champions League final. Mm-hmm. Like, You have to do that. And with Real Madrid, I feel that they are the worst type of opponent for Manchester City because Ancelotti doesn't rely on tactics. He relies on instinct, and that can be a very dangerous thing. I'm still weighing it on who would win, but if there are two players from either side, Shaka, that you would highlight, who would it be in this semifinal?
Ooh, that's but I think you have to go with the respective number nines. Quite obviously, for given how good they both are, given their impacts, and you've spoken about how Haaland has changed Manchester City. I think one of the big changes with having Haaland an out and out number nine with a physical presence as he does is how differently Manchester City can defend, and dare I say, defend a lead if they get one. Last season, they played with three up front, three small, diminutive, more natural midfielders, shall we say. But now, Manchester City, if they do get a lead, they can firmly put 10 behind the ball, including the goalkeeper, and just leave Haaland up front all on his own. That is one tactical difference, I think, that changes this tie. And again, that kind of depends on how the scoreline goes. Karim Benzema continues to be the biggest difference maker in European football right now. And I say that with the greatest of respect to the likes of Kylian Mbappe and Lionel Messi, who, well, to be blunt, are not at this stage of the competition. But Karim Benzema dictates so much about Real Madrid, dictates so much that is good about Real Madrid that he simply cannot be overlooked. Karim Benzema also is the kind of player that does not have a quiet day. He may have a quiet 89 minutes, but he may not have a quiet day. And I think you have to keep that in absolute mind. In terms of a second player, I'm going to have to go Kevin De Bruyne, who's been a little bit up and down, but when he's good, as he has been in this competition, I think that's when Manchester City are at their absolute best. And then secondly, for Real Madrid, and here's where I'm a little bit more torn. Of course, we're not quite sure how Carlo Ancelotti will go in midfield, whether he will go with the tried and trusted and Luka Modric and Toni Kroos, whether Tchouaméni will fill in as he has done. But you can also see Rodrigo, who's had huge impacts coming from either flank. But then Vinicius Junior, who is as unplayable as any for Manchester City. For Real Madrid, excuse me. He himself has been a little bit inconsistent at times. But if he's good, I'm not sure that Manchester City. Well, let me just say have the answer. But if you go with three at the back, as City did, and that forces a wing back to go with Vinicius Junior, or that leaves more room on the flanks as you saw against Bayern Munich, I'm not sure that's a chance you want to take. I'm not sure you want to give Vinicius the kind of space to run into that Kingsley Coman enjoyed today. The one big difference is, and Todd spoke about it, is Real Madrid have a number 9, Bayern Munich didn't. So do you take that chance? So it's a lot to play out. It's a lot that has to play out here between these two. That just makes for a really interesting tie. I will also say that this is the Champions League semi-final. And if it isn't difficult to call, if we aren't torn, if we aren't arguing about who's going to win and who's going to lose, then somebody somewhere in this competition has done something wrong, because this is the cream of European football.
Well said, my friend. Dare I ask you, with your initial gut instinct, who's going to the final in that match?
Well, I'm sure Real Madrid fans will be pleased to hear me say Manchester City.
And Man City fans are fuming right now. I'm going to go with Real Madrid right now. Right now, Los Blancos, I'm going to go. But, I'm usually wrong as well. So I'm sorry to say you're done. Anyway, on the other side, a fantastic Derby de la Madonnina for the third time in Champions League history. AC Milan will play Inter. This is the third time, as I mentioned, in the knockout stages, by the way. The 2003 semifinals and the 2005 quarterfinals. We remember that beautiful, historic, tumultuous image with Materazzi and Rui Costa just looking at the madness that ensued. There it is. And the game couldn't even go on because it was just too intense. Wonderful stuff, definitely for the purist here. But AC Milan has had the better of these two matches in the Champions League, Shaka, Hislop, and obviously they played very, very well as well against Napoli, everybody's darling team, who they thought we were going to win, and it wasn't the case. It was AC Milan. So what do you have in this game, my friend? Because they're not doing that great in Serie A. Inter are fourth, AC Milan are fifth. Napoli's pretty much running away with the title, a historic one for the first time in more than 30 years. But what do you see in this one? Who? Because we're going to have an Italian team in the final, but who's it going to be?
I'm leaning AC Milan here. I think getting the better of Napoli, and another confession to make that may please Real Madrid fans. When the draw was made as to the quarterfinals and the path through to hopefully the final, I thought Napoli would cruise this. I thought Napoli were going to cruise that bottom half of the bracket. But here we are talking about AC Milan getting the better of them over two legs. Given how good Napoli have been, how consistent they have been, I thought it was a foregone conclusion. And that's just looking at the Serie A table. Then AC Milan produced that performance against Napoli in the league. Then they produced two incredible performances in the Champions League to get the better of Napoli. And I just feel that AC Milan are trending in the right direction. Inter have been a little bit more inconsistent. And while they made easy work of Benfica, never mind what game finished 3-3, never mind that. I thought at 3-1 that game was all but over, given the first leg. So the late goals don't change anything. I thought Inter were just far better than Benfica. But Benfica are not in Napoli's class. And I think AC Milan take a lot more from it. Inter Milan as well have been far too inconsistent in the league, particularly of late, for me. So going into this one, everybody being fit, I just feel that AC Milan come into this in better condition.
Yeah, I may have to agree with you on that one. By the way, Simone Inzaghi is making history as well, as obviously an Italian manager have not led Inter Milan to this far in the Champions League for more than 40 years as well. And 5 matches without winning leading up to this game. Inzaghi really needed this for Inter. But I'm with you, my friend. AC Milan at this point are looking good. And Rafa Leao, what a player. His assist, by the way, for Olivier Giroud, that ridiculous run. That was his 20th goal contribution of the season, most by any Milan player in all competitions. And I feel, Shaka, that, sometimes in these games, in this very tumultuous, hectic, tense derby, specifically the Derby della Madonnina, you need that individual brilliance. Of course, Inter has Romelu Lukaku. Varela scored a great goal today. Lautaro Martinez, but Rafa Leao, Shaka, Hislop is somebody that can single-handedly win a game for you. Do you think that more so than ever, the individual stars are going to be needed than any other game?
Yeah, without question. And those stars to play to their best form, to their strengths. Rafael Leao, I think, has been outstanding all season long and has been for some time. And I think only continues to get better. Olivier Giroud, who many wrote off a few years ago, continues to show his experience, his guile, and what a link with Rafael Leao he's developed over this season. And again, I think that balance of youth and experience has proved wonderful for AC Milan this season. But then you counter that with the strength, the brute strength of Romelu Lukaku, who's playing with something to prove, and that understanding with Lautaro Martinez, which has developed over a number of years. Never mind the little time apart that they had, but they proved such an incredible duo. So looking at both these teams, how they match up, again, it's difficult to call. But I just feel AC Milan are the better of the two. given results of recent weeks and given that performance and how they managed the game over 2 ties against Napoli. That experience, that feel-good factor that beating a team such as Napoli gives you, I just feel puts AC Milan in a slightly better position. But I'll say it again, we are talking about the cream of European competition. And if there isn't debate, if there isn't disagreement, if these ties aren't hard to call, somebody has just fluked it in being here.
Well said, my friend. Let's not forget Olivier Giroud as well, the first Milan player to score 5 goals in a single season in the Champions League. Zlatan Ibrahimovic also did that a while back, so that would be a big factor. And by the way, we forgot to mention in the Real Madrid-Man City game, Militao is suspended for that first leg. So we'll see how important that is. And there you have it. Real Madrid against Man City and Inter against AC Milan. The first legs will be in May, of course, for a little bit longer for you to digest. Shaka Hislop, always a pleasure to have you, my friend. Thank you for being here.
Always good speaking with you, enemy.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.